sorry. She was shaming for getting it wrong.
Don't shame before we get it wrong. Don't shame by getting, no. Shh.
Sorry, my best.
Okay, 4, 2. Okay, we're going to go ahead and look at number 2. Is 2 in standard form?
No. Oh, yes.
Yes, because it's set up. We have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So what is our a term here? What is our b term? What is our c term? Okay, so we are good to set this up. So our discriminant is equal to b squared minus 4 times a times c. So what plugs in first?
16.
Okay, so if we plug in 16, so we get 16 squared minus 4 times
-1.
times.
-61.
All right, so what is our discriminant equal to here?
0.
0. If our discriminant is equal to 0, what does that tell us?
1.
One real rational root. Make sure your parentheses and negative signs are right, because that's probably what happened. All right, now for number 3. Okay, is that in standard form? Okay, what do I need to do to put it in standard form? So we're going to subtract 10x on both sides. Then we're going to write this in standard form. To write this in standard form, where does the negative 10x need to go? So we get negative 4x squared minus 10x plus 84 equals 0. What is our a term? What is our b term?
-10.
What is our c term?
84.
So we're going to find our discriminant, and we're going to plug in what first?
-10.
So negative 10 squared minus 4 times
-4.
times.
84.
And if we put that in our calculator, what do we get? 1,444. Can I take the square root of that?
Yes.
Okay, if it is a perfect square and greater than 0, it means it has 2 real rational roots.
Really? Oh my God.
All right, now we're going to look at number 4. So for number 4, is that in standard form? Yes. Okay, so what is our a term? What is our b term? Because there is not a plain old x term. What is our c term?
24.
Yeah, we can slow down a little bit. Just, we're trying to get through a certain amount of stuff today. So I want to make sure we get through it all. All right, so we have our discriminant. Okay, we have to plug it into our formula. For our discriminant, okay, we set it up. We do b squared minus 4 times a times c. What do we plug in first?
0.
All right, so we get 0 squared minus 4 times
30.
times.
24.
All right, so we have d is equal to what? What is our discriminant for this one? Negative 288. So if it's negative, what does that tell us? Two imaginary roots. Anytime it is negative, it will make it imaginary. It just feels right because that's how you write the I for imaginary.
That sounds very, very pretty. Yeah. Mine look like S's with dots on top.
Mine sometimes look like 2s. It's okay. Yes.
Wait. Y equals in the first graph.
Yeah, I know. People have been editing
I didn't-
things. Yeah.
What the?
I don't know. All right. So that is how we find the discriminant. Okay. That is how we find it and what it looks like for each of those types. Now, what we're going to do next is we're actually going to talk about what makes each method the right method for certain problems. Okay. Certain methods are quicker than others for certain types of problems, and some are more work for certain types of problems. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at the bottom where it has choosing the best method. All right, so for graphing can only be used sometimes. okay? And graphing is limited to when the roots are integers. That's the only time we can really use graphing to solve, okay? And so because of that, solving by graphing is not very practical, okay? On this test, we're not going to have to solve any by graphing. We already did a lot of graphing on our Unit 8 test, so I'm not really that worried about it on this test, okay? So graphing is not really practical. It is never the quickest way to it's never the quickest way to solve, and it's good for visually seeing where our solutions are or modeling certain scenarios, but it's not necessarily the best for solving equations, okay? It's good to use once it's solved. You can use it really easily, but it's not the best for actually doing the solving, okay? Now, factoring. Factoring is also limited to sometimes, okay? Because in order to solve by factoring, it has to be factorable, right? If it's not factorable, you can't solve by factoring. So this only works when your roots are rational. So if your roots are not rational, you cannot solve by factoring. Okay? This specifically happens if you're thinking about your discriminant. This happens when your discriminant is greater than or equal to 0 and a perfect square. Now, most of the time, it'll be super obvious when you should solve by factoring. So, for instance, on our test, I am not giving you ones where A is not 1 for factoring, because the shortcut is really where factoring makes it quicker. Because if you have to go all through grouping and do all of those things, it doesn't actually make it a lot faster. But if you can use the shortcut, factoring is significantly faster than using the quadratic formula. It's significantly faster than completing the square if you can use the shortcut. So we're going to look specifically when A is 1. That is when we should use factoring. It's when A is 1. Or there's just a GCF, or GCF. Okay, and we'll talk more about that as we go, but that's just kind of the broad idea of it. Now, square roots. These are also just a sometimes, okay? The only time you need to use square roots is when there is no BX term. So we're missing that middle term in standard form, or it's in vertex form. But there is no extra x term. That's when we need to use solving by square roots. Okay? Now, both completing the square and the quadratic formula can both always be used. Okay? Both of these can always be used. But completing the square is a bit more of a longer process, right? The only time you really want to do completing the square is when A is 1 and B is even. If A isn't 1 and B isn't even, it's kind of just more work. Okay? But specifically B being even, that makes a big difference. Okay? If B isn't even, then when you take the divide it, you're going to have a fraction, and you have to square a fraction. It's going to be a whole thing. No one wants to do that. Okay? But if B is even, that makes completing the square a lot easier. Now, for the quadratic formula, you can use that anytime. It doesn't have any times when it's best used or anything like that. It can be used all the time, okay? And you use when other cases are insufficient. Because the quadratic formula isn't always the fastest. It's just always going to give you the answer, right? So you can use when other methods are insufficient. Hypothetically, if you use a quadratic formula for every single question, you would not get any of the points for using the correct method on the test. So you would get points for getting your answer correctly and doing the quadratic formula right, but you would miss all the points about I have a very specific, I made a rubric for grading to count for that case. So if you do it by the wrong method, you can do it and you can get partial credit, but I won't give you full credit for that question.
Tell you like do it by blah blah blah.
Except one section where you have to choose. But then it says use each method one time. All right. So I want us to go ahead and flip to the back of this. All right. Set it on my laptop. All right. Put it in the box. All right. We're going to look at this back section. Okay. So I kind of split this into two parts. I did a section where we could find the discriminant and where we could identify the type that we use to solve it. So if you're struggling to figure out which method you should use, the discriminant is a good tool to help you, but you can also figure it out without using the discriminant. Okay, so I want us to go ahead and we're going to look at equation A. So I have a trinomial here, okay? A is 1, is B even? No. Automatically, I am not going to use completing the square, right? B is an even, I'm not doing that. I'm also not going to use square roots because it's got a middle term, okay? Now, for factoring, okay, can you multiply anything to get 21 but add to get -9? Just off the top of your head. No, right? Chances are, for the types of problems that it's quicker for, if it doesn't come to you off the top of your head, there isn't one, okay? We're not going to be doing ones that make it harder. Shh, please. Okay, so for factoring to be the best method, it has to be one where it's not a hard problem to factor, right? So this one, you're not going to solve by factoring. So if we can't solve by factoring, not completing the square, and not solving by square roots, which method does that leave? All right, we are going to use the quadratic formula for this one. Before we do that, though, we're going to find our discriminant first. So what is our A term? What is our B term? What is our C term? So our discriminant is equal to B squared minus 4 times A times C. So what do I plug in first? So we have -9 squared minus 4 times. So if we evaluate that, what do we get? -3. Okay? Your square roots, or not your square roots, the negative on your 9, did you put that in parentheses?
No, I added 4 instead of 10.
That'll do it. All right, now, okay, from here, okay, our discriminant is negative. So what does that mean?
2 imaginary.
We have 2 imaginary roots. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and go solve this problem using the quadratic formula. So we're going to drop down to the quadratic formula part, and we're going to write our equation there. So we're going to solve x squared minus 9x plus 21 equals 0. We already found our A, B, and C. A is 1, B is -9, C is 21. Okay, so we're going to set up our quadratic formula. X is equal to -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Then we plug in. What do I plug in first? So I have -9 plus or minus the square root of squared minus 4 times divided by 2 times. All right. So we get x is equal to a negative and a negative make a plus or minus, what's the discriminant?
-3.
Divided by?
2.
All right. So can I take the square root of -3?
No.
But can I simplify it?
Yeah.
So I can split that into the square root of -1 times the square root of 3. What is the square root of -1?
5.
And what's the square root of 3? It's just the square root of 3, right? So we get x is equal to 9 plus or minus I times the square root of 3 divided by 2. And that is our solution. So that is how we would solve by the quadratic formula. Okay? All right. Now for equation B. Okay? For B. What term is missing? B term. So if we have no B term, we automatically solve by square roots. Okay. So before I do that, though, I'm going to find my discriminant. So what is our A term?
-2.
What is our B term?
0.
What is our C term?
144.
Okay, so to find the discriminant, we do B squared minus 4 times A times C. What do I plug in?
0.
0.
So we have 0 squared minus 4 times
-2.
times.
144.
And what is the discriminant? 1,000 what? 1,152. Okay, is that a perfect square? No. If you can put it in your calculator and it gives you a decimal, it's not a perfect square. So if it's greater than 0 and not a perfect square, you're going to have 2 real irrational roots. Now, which method did we say we need to use for this? Square roots. So let's go down to solving by square roots. And we're going to write in this equation. So negative 2x squared plus 144 equals 0. So in order to solve by square roots, what do I need to do first? I've got to get what by itself? X squared. We got to isolate x squared. So to do that, what do I need to move?
144.
Okay, I subtract 144 first. And I get negative 2x squared is equal to negative 144. Then what do I do? So I get x squared is equal to 72. Now I do what? So when I take the square root of both sides, I get x is equal to positive negative. Can I simplify that?
Yes.
What's the biggest perfect square that goes into 72? 36. How many times does 36 go into it?
Twice.
All right, what's the square root of 36? So we have 6 root 2. So positive negative 6 times the square root of 2. And that is our answer.
What's going on?
I have no idea.
Black people? Did you say black people, Kaden? Oh, your own kind?
I didn't say all of that.
All right, now we're going to look at C. So C is kind of the oddball out here, okay? Yep. So C is the oddball out here, and that's because C is one that is technically solved by factoring, okay? But I don't know if that's the easiest method, but that's the method we're going to do, just so we have practice with it. But for this test, you're going to just have ones you can use the shortcut with, okay? But we still need to make sure we know how to factor, because factoring is never going to go away at this point in math. We're going to keep factoring forever, okay? So for our C, before I start to solve by factoring, what is our A term? What is our B term? What is our C term? Okay, so to find our discriminant, we get, what do we plug in first?
Negative 22.
So we get negative 22 squared minus 4 times
7.
and what is the discriminant?
400.
400. Is 400 a perfect square? Yes. So that gives us 2 real rational roots.
Well, we need to know how to, like, which one it is.
Yes. All right. So we're going to solve this by factoring. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to write down 3x squared minus 22x plus 7 equals 0. Because I'm not going to lie to you. If I saw this problem, I would probably just use the quadratic formula. I have a tendency to use the quadratic formula whenever a isn't 1. Or it's not 2 terms. Yes. So if it's 2 terms, I'm not going to use the quadratic formula. And if a isn't 1, I tend to use the quadratic formula. This is a fluke. I just wasn't paying attention when I was making this, apparently. Okay? But we are going to factor this. Does it have a greatest common factor? No. So we had to figure out what multiplies to give us a times c. What is a times c? And what adds to give us b? What is our b? Okay, what multiplies to give you 21 but adds to give you negative 22? So we have to do this one by grouping because it cannot use a shortcut because A is not 1. So we do 3x squared minus 21x minus 1x plus 7 equals 0. And we group the first two. What is the greatest common factor of the first two? 3x, which leaves us with x minus 7. Okay? For the second two, what is their greatest common factor? Minus 1. So when we take out that negative 1, what does that leave us with?
X minus 7.
Now we take the part that's the same and the part that's left over and set it equal to 0. And am I done solving?
No.
What do I have to do with each of those factors? Set them equal to 0 and solve them. How do I solve x minus 7 equals 0? What do I do? Plus 7. X equals 7. Okay, then we have 3x minus 1 equals 0. How do I solve that? From there, what do I do?
Divide by 3.
Divide by 3. So we get x is equal to 1/3. So we have x is equal to 1/3, comma, 7. So when you have to solve, if you have to factor by grouping in order to factor it, it's not the fastest way. Even if it has real rational solutions. It's just not the fastest way if you have to factor by grouping, okay? Just because it takes extra time. But if you can go straight to the shortcut and from here and just solve from there, super quick, super easy, my favorite ones to do. I solve by factoring almost all the time when A is 1, and I can factor it because it's quicker, okay? Now our last one here, okay, A is 1, B is even, and is there anything that multiplies to give me negative 15 but adds to give me 6? No. So we're going to use this one by completing the square. Okay, before we do that, let's find our discriminant. A is,
1,
B is,
6,
C is.
negative 15.
So our discriminant is equal to 6 squared minus 4 times, and it equals what? 66. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I forgot to make the answer key for the back page, so I've just been winging it all day. So we're good.
It's okay.
They're not that hard, so we're good. So from here, okay, we're going to actually go and solve this by completing the square. So for the completing the square, yes. It is 96. Micah, you led me astray.
How do I keep getting this wrong?
All right, I'm coming to look at your calculator and telling you what's wrong. Because this is like the fourth one you got
Okay,
wrong.
look.
Yes.
I typed it.
You forgot to square.
Oh.
So you have 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 15.
I have to take it tomorrow.
Micah, I'm going to stop trusting you.
Lucky you.
All right, 96. I thought 66 was wrong, but I couldn't remember what it was. I was like, I know it has a 6. I think that might be right. All right, now we're going to look at completing the square. So we're going to write this in here. We have x squared plus 6x minus 15 equals 0. To complete the square, you do the same steps every single time. Okay, you start by moving C. So how do I move C? Add 15 to both sides. So then we have x squared plus 6x is equal to 15. Then I divide by A. What is A that I need to divide by? Does dividing by 1 change anything? So we get x squared plus 6x equals 15. Here comes the actual completing the square part. Okay, so to complete the square, what do we do with our B term? Divide it by 2, then square it. What is 6 divided by 2? 3 squared is. And we add that to both sides. All right. Once we do that, this is now something that we can factor. What multiplies to give you 9 but adds to give you 6? And So since it's 3 and 3, we can write it as x plus 3 squared equals, what is 15 plus 9? And from here, how do I solve? So we get x plus 3 equals positive negative. What's the biggest perfect square that can go into 24? 4 times. So what's the square root of 4? Can I take the square root of 6? So we get positive negative 2 times the square root of 6. What do I do from there? So x is equal to negative 3 plus or minus 2 root 6.
Wait. What happened with the 6x? Like, did it just like...
So we factored it. So we figured out what multiplied to give us 9, but adds to give us 6. It's 3 and 3. So that is x plus 3 times x plus 3, or x plus 3 squared. So we just factored it.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Now, that is our 4 methods. So what we are going to do for the rest of today, okay, we have a couple other things we're going to do. So I have 2 papers I'm going to pass out to you, okay? So the first paper I'm passing out is this yellow paper, okay? This is your assignment for today. It has 8 best method questions on it. So on the front, there are 4 questions, and on the back, there are 4 questions. For each side of the page, you will do 1 by each method, okay? You won't repeat except, so like for the first 4, there will be 1 that you do by quadratic formula, 1 you do by completing the square, 1 you do by factoring, 1 you do by square roots. Done the same thing on the back. Okay, the orange paper is your review guide, okay? I went ahead and giving this out because I have some people that are taking their test tomorrow after school, okay? So I wanted to give them this early. So you are getting both of these, okay? As soon as you get them, start working on the yellow one. For the yellow one, in the directions, it says to find the discriminant. You do not have to find the discriminant. You just need to find the discriminant if it will help you.
Are we able to use our yellow GPS paper?
No, because I'm giving you something else.
Something nice. Help.
All right. For this test, I have already told y'all there's not going to be a note card. Okay? There will be a flip book. I'm going to pass out that flip book as soon as I'm done with this. Okay? How that flip book will work, okay, is we are not going to have time in class to go through the entire flip book. Okay? So I have already started recording the video for the flip book. It'll be in 2 parts, but it will be there. Okay? And I should have that uploaded after school today. So it will be up to you to get the notes and fill in the flip book on your own time. Okay? So I want to make sure we have plenty of time to review and do all of the things. Which is really no different than a note card, except I'm just exactly telling you what you need to put on it. Now, go ahead and start working on the yellow page while I pass out your flip books, and then we are going to talk about the yellow page real fast. He took himself a pretty one.
They are pretty well.
No. I think the one that looks blue.
So you can do it without the discriminant, but having the discriminant.
Yes.
So like if it's imaginary, it can't be back. If you know it's real and irrational, it can't be back.
Good.
Real and irrational,
Well, yes.
those would be. Any of them.
He ordered the day before.
But
Asking for
if it's to that.
I
Right?
get
That's what
kind of
height.
confused, like, I'm building everybody else in.
Because like,
He
you
let
know,
Joseph up on the top. And he was like smoking and stuff.
Yeah.
So like I'm not even mad at Joseph.
All right. So I want us all to look at our yellow paper. Okay. So our yellow paper, it is 9.7. Okay. I do have the answers written over there, and I also have them in the assignment on Schoology as well. You have to click on it though to find them. But for 9.7, okay, I want us to look at these, and we're going to talk about how we know what method it is. Okay. So for number 1. Okay, A is 1, B is even, so it could be completing the square or it could be factoring. Okay, so let's talk about it. Is there anything that multiplies to give you 53 but adds to give you negative 16? No. Okay, so this one is completing the square. Okay, this one is a completing the square. Students stapled them. So some of them are stapled better, some of them are stapled not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that one bad?
Yeah.
Here, I got you.
Some of them,
I'll
some
fix
of
it.
them are stapled really bad.
It's definitely because Jagger did it.
All right,
I
now,
wonder who's stapled that ones.
now, for number 2, okay, that is 2 terms. What term is missing there? B. If our B term is missing, okay, we have to solve by square roots. Okay, so this one, since we don't have the B term, this is square roots.
You said we don't have to solve for this one?
You do not have to, no. Unless these tell you to, but you don't have to for these. And on the test, there'll be a section dedicated to the discriminant and nothing else that you have to do with it. All right, now for number 3. Okay, again, A is 1, B is even. We already used completing the square. So let's think, can we factor this? Is there a number that multiplies to give you 12 but adds to give you negative 8?
Yeah.
Which?
I don't know what it is, but I'm sure there is one.
-6 and the -2.
Negative 6 and negative 2. So we can do this one by factoring. And this is when we can use the shortcut on, so it's much quicker. Okay. For number 4, this one has 10k squared equals 8 minus 6k. So is that in standard form? No. So we need to put that in standard form. Okay. Now, your A term is what?
10.
If your A term is not 1, use the quadratic formula for this section, okay? Unless it specifically says, solve this by completing the square, and A is bigger than 1, use the quadratic formula. Do not try to do that by any other method. You will just not be happy, okay? If A is something ridiculous, use the quadratic formula. All right, let's go ahead and look at the back. So I want you to take a second and I want you to look through the back and just make your guess as to what method you use for each one. Okay? Just make your guess. You don't have to write it down or anything. Just I want you to make your guess as to what you use for each one.
On test 1, you like open answer, like not.
The only thing you can have is now I get what you mean. There are 4 multiple choice. The rest is 14.
That's not bad. Okay.
It was 15, but I took away the graphic.
Oh, shucks.
It was just unnecessary time sink.
I feel like we graphed a lot.
You've graphed a lot. You graphed all last unit. Zach, go sit down. All right. So number 5. Okay, what method do you think we need to use for this one?
Square.
Completing the square. Okay, because A is 1, B is negative, or not B. B is even, and even if I put this in standard form, is there anything that multiplies to give you negative 98 but adds to give you negative 2?
No,
I don't think so.
No.
probably not.
So number 5 is completing the square. All right, now, number 6. We only have 2 terms, and it's missing the what term?
B, C.
It's missing our C term.
Oh.
If it's missing the C term, you factor every single time. If it's missing C, you factor. If it's missing B, solve by square roots. Because if we write that in standard form, x squared plus 8x equals 0. What is the greatest common factor?
X.
Which leaves us with x plus 8. And then we just have to solve that. All right, for number 7, what term are we missing? B. Okay, if we're missing B, we solve by square roots. All right, and then for number 8, what is our A term? 9. Am I missing anything? No. If you are not missing anything and A is 9, you need to use the quadratic formula. All right. So you also went ahead and received your review, okay? Your review is laid out almost identical to how your test will be laid out. The review just has about double the questions, okay? Your test will end up being 14 questions with 4 multiple choice. So if you can do the review, you will be perfectly fine on the test, okay? And like I said, you can use your flip book, but you are responsible for filling in your flip book. Now, you are not allowed to add a bunch of extra information to your flip book, okay? Everything that's in here is what you need. Much more will probably just end up confusing you, okay? So, fill in the parts you need, okay? We are going to briefly turn this in whenever we turn in our test. So, I'm going to be deducting points if you write a whole bunch of stuff on here that you're not supposed to write.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, this is as opposed to a note card. You just have to, just like you would make a note card on your own, you make this on your own.
I think this is
Wait, so we're done?
Yeah, that is done. You have to just finish that and solve them.
The back ones?
All of them. Yeah, you solve those. The answers are up there on the board.